Hey guys, Effie here. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card using our Fresh Cut Peonies layering stamp set. This set comes with 4 peonies in different blooming stages. It also comes with 4 different leaves, 3 stems, 1 vase, one scripty hello sentiment. Now let's get started. First, I'm going to use the largest peony bloom. All of the blooms and the leaves and the stems come in 3 layers. So what I like to do with layering stamp sets is place the 3 layers on 3 separate acrylic blocks. For me, it just makes the card making process a little bit quicker with these layering sets. Another easier way to make this card is to stamp the card in layers. So what I mean by that is go with the lightest layer first. Let's say you're going to stamp all your peonies first. Go with the lightest layer first, the solid largest layer in each different floral. It's easier to do this because you have the ink out that you're going to use. But then again, this is only helpful if you already know where your peonies are going to be placed on your card. Now I'm going to start stamping. I'm going to stamp the first layer of my peonies in Memento's Angel Pink. This is a dye ink. I'm creating a background of peonies, so I want to make sure that when I'm stamping off the peonies, I don't have too much consistency. And what I mean by that is I want to make sure that the background is sort of random. I don't want the peonies all facing one direction or the peonies being in a set pattern. And that's what you see here. I'm having some trouble committing to the card. This is because sometimes I don't have an exact layout in mind. I have a general idea, but I still sometimes have issues committing. Now I'm moving on to the second layer. I'm using Hero Arts Shadow Ink in Bubblegum. This is a great mid-tone pink ink. I use it for a lot of my pink layers. After I finish up with this layer, I'm going to go on and stamp my third layer in Razzleberry ink from My Favorite Things. It's a hybrid ink. Now I really like this ink as my third darkest layer in my peony cards. So far, the 3 inks that I've used today are my go-to pink layers that I use over and over for my peony cards. I'm going to have to come up with some different combinations for different variations, but until then, these are my go-to pink layers that just stamp so nicely and bring out like a beautiful contrast to really bring out the best in these stamps. I've gone ahead and I've changed up the stamps on the acrylic blocks. I'm going to stamp this next flower, and I'm just going to go through the same process that I did with the fully bloomed flower. Now I'm just going from lightest to darkest again, but I'm also stamping some of the blooms offset to the side and also off the paper to create a more randomized look to this background. Now I'm just going to speed up the process, or rather I'm going to speed up the video here because the stamping of the florals are all the same. So I'm just going to speed up the video and enjoy the music until we get to the masking. Hope you all enjoyed the music. Now let's get ready to mask off this card. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first layer of all the florals, the first layer meaning the most solid of the layers. I'm going to take that and I'm going to stamp these off on typing paper. Now you don't really want to use a light ink to stamp these off, to stamp your mask off, because you want to be able to see where you're trimming. I made the mistake of stamping some of these masks in Angel Pink, and when it dries very light, so it's kind of hard for me to see the outline of the stamps. So use a darker ink when you're making your masks. Also, another tip, you might want to create a couple of masks, not just one set, but maybe 2 or 3 sets, because if you're stamping off in dye ink, once you use a mask a few times with dye ink, the dye ink bleeds through the paper, so you're going to have to create a new mask anyway. So when you're creating your first set of masks, just stamp off a couple more each and cut them out. It might just be easier to do them all in one shot. Or if you're really feeling ambitious, you might want to create some masks out of plastic or acetate. This way you can save your mask and use them over and over again. The thing is, when you're using the plastic or the acetate, the ink will not bleed through. It'll just sit on top of the plastic, which makes it reusable. And also, if you're just using regular typing paper masks, you can always save these when you're done, unless the ink has bled totally through the areas. So save your masks, even if they're typing paper masks, unless they're really inky, or create your own acetate or plastic masks. Now I've created my first set of masks for this card. I'm just going to take my adhesive runner and run some adhesive behind all of these masks so that I can temporarily adhere it to my card. The adhesive that I'm using is a temporary adhesive, so it's not going to, the mask is not going to stick permanently onto my card when I place it over like this. I'm going to be able to take the mask off, and if there's any glue or adhesive on the card panel, I'll be able to just rub it away. But I'll list all the supplies that I've used in my YouTube description and also on my blog or on the blog. Once I've placed all my masks on the card, I'm going to start stamping the leaves. I have 3 sets of inks that I'm using for the leaves. I'm using my Favorite Things Hybrid ink in Spearmint. This is my lightest green. And then I'm going to use Hero Art's Green Hills mid-tone dye ink. And then for the darkest hue, I'm going to use Simon Says Stamp dye ink in Fern. I'm just stamping a few of the leaves that come in the set, and I'm just stamping them around the flowers, and then after I finish stamping the leaves, I'm going to start stamping the stems. Once the masking is finished, I'm just going to take one of the leaves and stamp them around the edges of the card panel. And I'm doing this to just create some more interest and make a better, more natural looking background. I really like the way this card has turned out. I like making this type of card more so than stamping, you know, a bouquet or a vase full of peonies. You know, while that is beautiful, this just, it's a different way to use your stamps, because you, instead of creating, you know, a centerpiece on your card, you can make this gorgeous floral background instead. Now that all the stamping is done and finished, I'm going to die cut, or I'm going to die cut my card panel with a rectangle stitch die from Lawn Fawn's rectangle die set. It's just the biggest die in the set, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm just going to put this on top of my card panel and run it through my die cutting machine so that I can get the stitched lines along the outline. Now I'm going to heat emboss a congratulations sentiment onto my card, but I'm going to use my MISTI to help me align the sentiment onto the card panel. I want to make sure that it's on there straight. The MISTI has really helped a lot with aligning all of my sentiments. Before the MISTI, I would always stamp my sentiments crooked, and it just turned into a hot mess. So I'm just prepping my card panel with some anti-static embossing powder tool. It's from EK Success, and it's just going to help with making sure that there's no stray embossing powders all over the card. I'm going to stamp the congratulations sentiment, which is from the Shoe Wardrobe Filled set. I'm going to stamp the sentiment with Versamark ink, which is just a clear sticky ink, which the embossing powder is going to stick to. For my embossing powder, I'm using Ranger Gold Tinsel embossing powder. It has a ton of glitter, and it's beautiful. And after you apply the heat to it, the sentiment just comes out so gorgeous and glittery. If you find that you have some stray embossing powders around your sentiment, you can always take a small brush and just kind of brush all the strays away. I'm going to heat up my tool for a few seconds before I apply it to the powder, and you can see as you apply it, it just melts the embossing powder. You can kind of see the effect here on camera, and it looks super cool. Next, I'm just going to mount my card panel onto a side folding card base. Again, my card panel, which is all stamped with the beautiful peony background, it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So my card panel, I took a 8 1/2 by 11 Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I just cut it in half at 5 1/2 along the long side, and I scored it right down the middle at 4 1/4. For the last step, I'm going to mount my stamped card panel onto my side folding card base, and I'm applying a liberal amount of adhesive on my card panel because it warped a little from the heat. I hope you all enjoyed my video. This is my finished card, and I hope you guys will come visit again soon for my next video. Take care, guys.